back when I was sort of coming up in the business, people turned to CNBC, and there was a guy there, I won't mention his name, but anyone that's watched CNBC can relate to this, where he's screaming at the TV, going through these stock picks, where he's like, booyah, and he's got all these bells and whistles going off, and that's where people turn to for like investment advice. When you actually look at that individual stock picking record, all you have to do is the opposite, and you'll like triple the returns of the S&P 500 or some crazy statistic like that.
Right.
And so a lot of times where people turn to today is like these influencer type of folks on like social media, or they look it up, or hey, I talked to a friend about this, or my friend's dad who has a subscription to Kiplinger's magazine or Smart Money told me to do this, and it's like, oh, a lot of times it's like the blind leading the blind. And
Absolutely.
so I just had a passion for helping people and really having an impact, and so it drew me to this industry, even though I got into it by accident. I didn't know what I wanted. When I got involved in it, I realized very quickly that this was something that I was passionate about and wanted to continue after my internship.
Speaking on those predators you were talking about, it's typically not the corporate vultures who are preying on these guys. It's their brother or their uncle or their dad even, who has this great innovative business idea and this great opportunity.
Right.
And you trust the people closest to you. You think that they have your best interest at heart at the end of the day. And sometimes you have to look at it and say, like, even though they're family, I got to do what's best for me. I can't focus on what they're trying to say. I need to go to someone who has developed those skill sets and is qualified to actually give me the advice on how to manage my money appropriately.
They're young, they're naive, and they're making a lot of money at a young age, which is not really the traditional path that most sort of traditional workers go through, right? It's like, I'm in college, I'm broke. I'm figuring out how to split the case of beer with my 3 roommates that night. And that's not the same experience that a lot of college athletes have and pro athletes have, where they're at their peak earning years at a very young age, where they haven't had a lot of experience either, but they have money. And so it can be a very dangerous place for them to be in because they haven't had a lot of that life experience yet that maybe someone in the corporate sense would have, where they're 40 years old and they start making $500,000, $1 million plus a year in the corporate boardroom. They've had 20 years of work and life experience, and a lot of these guys haven't.
Now, one of the books I picked up to give myself some guidance is the Millionaire Master Plan. And one of the first things it talks about is checking leaky pipes before you figure anything out. So, I mean, you can be rich in your bank account, but if you're not, rich in your mindset or wealthy in your mindset, you're really not wealthy. You're still poor, and you can fix the pipes of today by solving them with duct tape, but it doesn't solve the problem of tomorrow. So it really goes into redoing and paying attention to the infrastructure and making sure that you're set up for when money does start flowing in, that it's not going to be leaking out and you have no idea.
We talk about that foundation all the time with our clients, and one of my best friends, he is one of the leading addiction specialists in the world. And I remember a long time ago, I asked him, being naive, I said, who are your clients? And he said, some of the richest people in America. And I was a little taken back by that. And his name is Ben. And I said, Benny, I wouldn't have guessed that. And he says, he goes, a lot of people have a stereotype that they assume if you have addiction problems with substance abuse in particular, that maybe you're impoverished and you grew up in maybe not so great of a neighborhood. He goes, it's the reverse. He goes, think about rock stars who die early, right? He goes, they have money and they can buy a lot of the expensive drugs that if you're poor, you can't. And so a lot of times if you have those bad habits, money's just like putting lighter fluid on a fire.
Right.
So I got to read that book. It sounds like there's some good nuggets in there.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's ultimately what led to Steve Jobs going in his 50s. He's going out and taking LSD and doing whatever else to open his mindset and expand his creativity. But realistically, like I forget who said it. Stephen A. Smith. He'll say like, stay off the weed.
Yeah.
And like all these guys are like, oh no, it's a great thing to help out with like the pain of playing with football and some of like the, you know, the bumps and bruises that you get along the way. But like, it's just diluting it. Like, you have that pain for a reason. Like, sit there and feel it. Allow yourself to feel the pain. Like, understand why you have that pain. There's a reason that your body's feeling that. It's not to figure out how to escape it. It's to, hey, this is the warning signal that there's some shit that you need to figure out. There's some things that you need to work through, and this is just your light bulb to let you know.
Yeah. I think there's so many great analogies you can pull from around money and the habits with money, and creating that good structure and not putting duct tape around a leaky pipe. A lot of our clients, when they get to professional sports, a lot of times their income is their home run. If they're making, particularly in the NFL, if they get to that off that rookie contract, and if they're not a first or second round draft pick, but they're 3 through 7, and they get league minimum or maybe a little signing bonus on top of it, they really need to wait till they get that second contract. But that is their home run. And so we talk to our clients about how does your asset allocation, particularly with your investment strategy, need to align with your life goals. And for a lot of these guys, if they can just stick to a budget, going back to like that game plan, and I'm not saying they need to like live like a monk and live on like $2,000 a month, but if they can say, okay, I'm making league minimum, I'm on a rookie contract, and if I can live on 10 or 15 grand a month and just bank the rest of it, in a lot of ways, when they get to the end of that rookie contract, they can have a really good baseline to where that can generate income for them post playing football, or they can use that to parlay into some other longer term investments that may have a higher return profile. So I think the short of it, Jake, is we really try to, once we solve the risk-based needs first, we then really get into building an asset allocation specifically for where they're at in their life stage, but recognizing that they don't need to swing for the fences with a lot of their investments. It's not to say that we won't have some parts of their portfolio that are high returning, high risk, but the bulk of it really needs to support what their life goals are. I go back to the client who said, I don't want to have a job. That was his life goal. And I want to do what I want to do because I want to do it, not because I need the money. And so if that's the case and you get drafted when you're 22, 23 years old, and the average lifespan is only 4 or 5 years, depending on the position that you're playing, you really need to have a pretty conservative investment portfolio that hits singles and doubles, not necessarily swings for that home run, so that post your professional athlete career, you've got a really strong foundation to where you can go start a business or whatever that next path is. So I think bringing it full circle, the asset allocation needs to be custom to what's going on with their life.
And you can't always swing for the fence. Sometimes you just need to get on first base. So what's your fee structure? Do you charge a percentage of assets under management? Are you taking commission on products that you're offering?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Great question. I said I would not get on a soapbox, but I am going to get there for a moment. I think it's really hard to work with any advisor that earns a commission for a transaction when they're dealing with someone's money. We don't take any commission. We are 100% fee firm. And I'm very convicted in my opinion on this matter. I was at a firm previous to starting my own that there was this hybrid model between commission and fee. And I think what that does in a lot of ways is we use the analogy of going to a doctor because most people can relate to this. Imagine for a moment that you're coming in to work with an orthopedic surgeon, or you got a bad back and you go to a chiropractor. The doc looks at you and says, Jake, I'm going to get you great. I'm going to get you better, right? I'm going to get you back on the field. We're going to do this whole litany of testing, and we're going to figure out what's going on with you, and I'm going to get you back on the field. And you look at the doc and you're like, thank God, this is my career. Doc, how do I pay you? like, you like bill my insurance or I pay you cash? Like, how does this work? And he says, Jake, I'm going to do all of this for free because I get paid a cut based on how many supplements you buy from me. You're naturally going to be skeptical, thinking, well, do I need supplements to fix my issue? If that's the only way that this person gets paid, I'm naturally going to be skeptical as to what they're recommending. And I think about most or a lot of financial advisors that are out there that get paid a commission for the placement of a product or a service that they're doing, and naturally they're going to have a bias. And so that's why I'm very, very opinionated on this matter, and I recognize that. I'm not insinuating that people that earn commission are inherently bad. I just think that you need to recognize how your advisor is compensated for the advice that is rendered. And naturally, if they are compensated by selling you more stuff, they get paid more the more stuff you buy. I think naturally there tends to be some skepticism as to, are they recommending truly what's in the best interest of the client? So we are 100% fee only. We always try to prepare our guys ahead of the season. Like, what are we going to do with the first couple game checks? Well, we're going to get your off-season savings accomplished, right? What are some major purchases that you might have, right? Do you need a new vehicle? Do you need to get your wife or girlfriend something? You're going to get engaged this off-season, like, well, right, we got a budget for a wedding or whatever it may be. So we always try to plan ahead of time and then deal with the risk management piece, right? What happens if you get injured, right? You're not on a guaranteed contract, so what happens, right? Anyway, that's what we do. And as far as like the reports are concerned, so we are trying to do more and more on-demand type of like recorded videos. We have to be a little bit careful with some of the compliance regs in our industry when we do something like that, but a lot of times we try to get content over to our clients on just a simple like Zoom recording with a screen share. It might be something like, hey Jake, thanks for reaching out last night. I'm sorry I couldn't get to you at 8:30 at night. But you asked a question about blah, blah, blah. And we'll do like a 5 to 7 minute like video recording if we do a screen share, because we want to show them like the effect of leverage as an example. If they're like, should I borrow money for this thing or should I just buy it in cash, where we would want to illustrate a concept, we'll just do it over a Zoom recording and send them out a link to that recording. That way they can watch it on demand, right? I mean, I think we just live in a world today that unfortunately people want answers right away. Sometimes that means they get down a rabbit hole of like bad information. So we want them to also not have to feel like they have to schedule a meeting like the traditional way. So we're trying to use technology to help just embrace that on-demand type of relationship where we might not be able to get to them like right that second because we have another client meeting, or at 8:30 at night I'm probably zoning out myself, probably running on fumes at that point. But at least they can watch it. One of my clients gave me some feedback recently. He goes, it was so great. He goes, I got the recording that you did and I listened to it while I was walking my dog the next morning at like 6 o'clock in the morning. So I sent you an email at 7:30 at night. I didn't expect a response right away, but when I woke up, I saw I had an email response with a Zoom recording in there, and I listened to the response while I was walking my dog at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I know you wouldn't have gotten on a Zoom call at 6 in the morning for me. So we're trying to do more of that to like accommodate our clients' schedules.
And now they're not trying to remember what you said on the call, or they're only half listening because they're taking notes. Being able to go to that video and pause it, play it back again, a second, third, or even fourth time. That's right. Really trying to, absorb that information and understand like, what does this mean for me and how do I actually actively apply it?
We actually got a referral a few months ago from a client who actually forwarded that recording to a friend who had the same question, and he goes, hey, that's great. And it was one of the reasons he came to us. And so we try to do more of that for our clients, just because people have busy lives, and the traditional, I got to schedule a meeting, go see the guy, or jump on a Zoom call. Sometimes people don't have time for that. They can listen to it on a plane ride or whatever.
So what are 3 things that someone who's listening today could implement into their daily life to start, getting onto the path of accumulating generational wealth?
Yeah, boy, I love this topic. So I think about leadership. In a lot of ways, leadership isn't saying, it's doing. When I think about generational wealth, that means that you have to act in a leadership capacity for those next generations. So have good spending and savings habits, right? A lot of times, like if you fill your life with material possessions, right, which is, again, in the world we live in today, particularly with athletes, there's a lot of cultural influences and like just, I don't want to say peer pressure, but like there's sort of a stigma, I think, of like, I have to have the nicest stuff when the TV camera pans on me after the game, right? And it's like, I'm not saying you need to dress like, a schlep rock, but like, you don't need to have the nicest stuff. And so, making sure that you create those good habits and disciplines so that you can teach the next generation that. There's a great book about generational wealth. Garrett Gunderson, I believe, is the author's name, and it's called What Would the Rockefellers Do? And for those that don't know the Rockefellers, they're one of the wealthiest American families of all time. And a lot of times there's a statistic in our industry that the third generation really screws it up.
Yep.
When they inherit wealth. And the Rockefellers have managed in a large way to preserve their estate for past that third generation. And I think in a lot of ways it's because of some of the habits that they taught that next generation about the value of money. One of the things that I read in the book, it's been a while since I read it, so I might get some of the facts a little bit off, but like if one of the heirs spends $20 million from the family estate, they have to replace it by the time they die. So you talk about like good habits of money, like, hey, I don't know what their estate's worth. It's probably somewhere in the billions. I think it's an undisclosed amount, but like, all right, you're ninth generation Rockefeller, like you're going to spend $25 million. That's fine. You're entitled to spend $25 million. You have to replace it. So it teaches them the value of money. And so I think about, in order to teach the value of money as that leader, that first generation, for a lot of our clients, they are that like catalyst that like, I'm going to change the direction of my family because I got drafted or whatever it may be. You have to have those controls in place. Otherwise, you can talk about it, but if you're not doing it yourself, then how can you expect your children to follow in your footsteps, or your grandchildren to follow in their footsteps, and not be just one of those statistics where the third generation screws up the family wealth?
Yeah, and it's one thing to give advice, but to actually live that advice is a completely another story.